Cold brew coffee may be smooth, trendy, and easy on the stomach, but is it secretly driving up your cholesterol? In today's episode, I'll break down the science behind cold brew, how it differs from hot coffee, and why, if you've had bariatric surgery or used GLP-1s, you should pay attention to this heart health connection. Before you pour your next glass, listen in.
Say goodbye to chalky calcium chews. ProCare Health makes chews that are creamy, not gritty, and packed with food-based TrueCal for superior absorption. Now available in peaches and cream. And yes, it tastes as good as it sounds. Save 10% with code BSS10 at ProCareNow.com.
I'm bariatric dietitian Dr. Susan Mitchell. You're listening to the Bariatric Surgery Success podcast. I'm so glad you're here today. I want to give a shout out to Sue Ahen, who gave the Bariatric Surgery Success podcast a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. She said, I enjoy Dr. Susan's podcast. I had VSG in 2024, and her podcasts have helped me when I encounter times of frustration and discouragement. I'm so glad, Sue, that you found the podcast helpful, especially when you feel discouraged. I love hearing from you, and it's actually super easy for you to leave a podcast rating. Wherever you listen to the Bariatric Surgery Success podcast, just go to the review section, and usually you'll see a click a 5-star rating kind of thing. Of course, notice I said 5-star, but just click your star rating. And if you feel like it and take it one small step farther, please write a review too, if there's a place for it. It really does help us, and I appreciate it so much. Well, it matters where you get your nutrition information. Here's what you need to know now. Cold brew coffee has exploded in popularity. It's smooth, it's less acidic, and it can be easier on the stomach. That's why so many bariatric surgery patients and those on GLP-1s reach for it daily. But here's the part nobody talks about. Cold brew might not be so gentle on your cholesterol. Let's dive in. Have you ever taken day-old coffee and added ice to make your version of iced coffee? Traditional iced coffee is regular coffee brewed hot and then cooled down. But it's different from cold brew coffee, which is just the opposite. You use water that's room temperature or chilled, and then the coffee steeps slowly over time, usually 24 hours, to get the caffeine and the flavor. Cold brew needs more ground coffee to get the flavor than traditional brewed coffee. Usually it's concentrated and then diluted with milk or cream or water. When it comes to taste, cold brew is milder. It's less acidic since cold water doesn't dissolve coffee as well as hot water. Traditional coffee can be bitter from the heat, which oxidizes the coffee oils and acids. Okay, don't miss this. Here's your first take-home tip. If you have heartburn, which is common with bariatric surgery, and it's also common with GLP-1 use, you may find cold brew easier to tolerate. You might be wondering, is the caffeine content in cold brew different? This answer isn't straightforward. Cold brew coffee uses a higher coffee to water ratio than traditional coffee. So even though the cold brew method extracts less caffeine, the higher amount of coffee used in the brew process likely compensates for the difference. Other factors, such as time, temperature, and grind size, can also affect the amount of caffeine. As a reminder, the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, also known as ASMBS, suggests to stay away from caffeine for at least the first 30 days after surgery while your body is still sensitive and heals. Then check in with your bariatric dietitian if you want to add caffeine back to your diet. When given the green light, consider starting with a caffeine decaf mix. Notice how the caffeine affects you and then gradually decrease the amount of decaf. Now, let's get to your cholesterol level. You may have heard that some coffee brewing methods push cholesterol numbers up. This is correct. Coffee itself doesn't contain cholesterol, but it might affect how the body produces it. A review of the current research on coffee consumption and blood lipids, also known as blood fats, particularly cholesterol, found that filtered coffee had very little effect on the cholesterol level. Did you catch that? Filtered coffee has very little effect on your cholesterol level. So here's the kicker. Drinking unfiltered coffee can increase both your total cholesterol number and the lousy LDL cholesterol. Cold brew may or may not use a filter, which then may or may not affect your cholesterol. So why does a filter matter? Let me explain. Coffee contains compounds called diterpenes. They're tied to increased cholesterol. We think these diterpenes trigger a rise in cholesterol and LDLs by inhibiting the body's natural ability to process and remove cholesterol. Coffee's tendency to boost cholesterol then depends on how it's prepared. The use of paper filters will help trap and block these diterpenes from reaching your cup. Some coffee filters are more porous than others, which would mean that the more porous the filter, the more diterpenes get through. So if the coffee has been filtered with a good filter, there's usually little effect on the cholesterol level. These diterpenes are strongest in coffee where the grounds have the longest contact with the water during brewing and no filtering. So here's what I want you to think about this week. If you're multitasking, come back to me. Is your cholesterol number high? And do you have genetically high cholesterol? How about your LDLs? Are they elevated? If you answer yes to any of these, the best thing to do is to use a filter when making cold brew or any other coffee for that matter. But there's some good news here beyond filter use. Even though diterpenes may increase cholesterol, coffee contains many other bioactive compounds that may reduce stress and inflammation in the body, which in turn may benefit heart health, plus reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes and Alzheimer's disease. So, want to have some coffee that you enjoy? Here's a fun spin that I like. I use cold brew. If you like more of a latte, this will be fun. Take a cup of cold brew, add a splash of milk or ever how much milk you like, some protein powder, and then a dash or two of cinnamon. And then use a whisk. Whisk it really well because that helps that protein powder to incorporate. Enjoy. Your health and you are worth it.
Bariatric Surgery Success with dietitian Dr. Susan Mitchell is produced and owned by Practicalories, LLC. All rights reserved. Remember, the content provided on this podcast is for information purposes only and doesn't create a patient-provider relationship. It's intended to provide reference material and is not designed to provide medical advice. Please consult your healthcare provider regarding any medical issues you have relating to symptoms, conditions, diseases, diagnosis, treatments, and side effects. Podcast guests express their own opinions, experience, and conclusions which do not necessarily reflect or agree with the host, Dr. Susan Mitchell or Practicalories, LLC.